All right, let's talk about old Nick Caserio. Nick. He spoke today. Sometimes when he says a lot, he says very little. Sometimes you got to read between the lines. But I thought today was pretty interesting, especially given the aftermath of what's happened the last few days with the organization. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans digital content. I am Landry Locker. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. Offseason is officially upon us. This was supposed to be the first day of preparation for the Denver Broncos. Jared Stidham versus CJ Stroud. You thought maybe you'd have the quarterback advantage and you would be on the fast track towards competing in the Super Bowl. Shortly after getting to the championship game for the first time, however, it did not happen. Nick Caserio spoke immediately. He talked about the season and his overall outlook.
Really proud of his team, really proud of what we accomplished, really proud of what we've done organizationally. A lot of work that's gone into this. A lot of people are involved in that process. But, you know, we've had the best 3-year stretch in the history of the franchise. I mean, you know, certainly we don't take that lightly. You know, we understand there's still some work in front of us, and that's a challenge that lies ahead. The reality is, the more we're playing games in January, I mean, that's where we want to be. You like to be playing a few more games in January and February, and ultimately, like, that's the goal. That's what we're all striving for in this league. And ultimately, like, we feel like we're more than capable of being able to do that.
Look, I understand, like, you sure you can compare yourself to the history of a franchise and all that, and more times than not, like in most franchises, it's going to make you look good. It's going to be a good result, but this has been a mediocre franchise. You should have been in the conference championship. And if Nick Caserio is going to continue to measure himself against what has been a very mediocre franchise, then it's A, selectively dense, and it B, just doesn't make sense. I didn't even mean to rhyme there, but it just happened to. I've covered Nick Caserio from the second that he arrived here. I've been very critical of Nick Caserio. I've talked to Nick Caserio at press conferences. I've talked to Nick Caserio away from press conferences. I've always, like, kind of tried to be as fair and as objective when talking about Nick Caserio for a long, long time, to the point where the first 2 years we were talking process over results, and it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense to a lot of people. For me, I actually understood it. I think you go beyond what the results were in the process. I think the process kind of played out, and it gave you the opportunities that you've had in the last 3 years. But you should take lightly comparing yourself to what the Texans of the past have done. So that's the one thing that I disagree with when it comes to Nick Caserio is don't sit here and tell me, yeah, well, this is the best 3-year stretch in franchise history. There's 4 teams that haven't made the conference championship game since this organization started. So if that's what your measurement is, and that's what the measuring stick is, then it's not going to, you're always probably going to be satisfied, and you're not really setting yourself to higher standards. It's almost as ridiculous as CJ Stroud saying he played good after the Pittsburgh game, or that he played good in the second half against the Patriots. Like, it just that's not a good way to measure yourself. And I think Nick Caserio needs to be a little bit better than that. Shout out to Sleeper, by the way, for sponsoring the video. We'll do the more than, less than tomorrow and the next day. Tomorrow we'll do AFC. Friday we'll do NFC. You can download the Sleeper app if you want to play the game. Use it as the scoring app, and you can get 100% back up to $100. Here's what Nick Caserio had to say about CJ Stroud, though, and the turnovers. And CJ Stroud was a popular topic. We'll just go through a few things that Nick Caserio said about CJ Stroud, because you knew it was going to be a popular topic today when Nick spoke.
Taking care of the football for a quarterback, like, you're and we talked about this. D'Amico and I both talked to all the quarterbacks about, including CJ. Your number one job as a quarterback is to mitigate risk. Period. End of story. Every single play. And if you do that, you're going to give your team a pretty good opportunity to win. If you don't do that, it's probably going to be a little bit harder. I mean, Drake put it on the ground the other day a couple times, but unfortunately we put it on the ground more, and that's why the result was the result. CJ had a really good season. He's done a lot of great things, done a lot of great things for his team, a lot of great things for this organization. I mean, anytime that you pass John Elway in terms of, what you've accomplished in a short period of time, I mean, like, talk about, like, Hall of Fame quarterback. So CJ played good football this year. Honestly, it wasn't our best day as a team.
I still haven't figured out, like, what is he saying that he passed John Elway in? Someone told me it was total wins with a longer season. I'm really confused by what he passed John Elway in, and I don't even know why that needs to be mentioned. I don't think you need to be mentioning C.J. Stroud and John Elway in the same sentence. I thought that was a little bit interesting as to what Caserio said. Like, John Elway, like, that's an insult to everyone's intelligence. Maybe it's like a massaging of the ego, but I just don't get it. Maybe there's a recency bias.
Yeah, look, if we want to go game by game, like, we don't win a Kansas City game without C.J. Stroud. I mean, so again, like, that's one game. All right, look, he'll be the first to tell you he didn't play well on Sunday. All right, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he played well either. Like, he knows that. So in the end, all right, got to learn from it. What can we do better? All right, and then we're moving forward. All right, I mean, so you look at his body of work. This guy's been a damn good quarterback in this league for 3 years. I mean, it's the truth. So, again, you want to look at everything in totality, and then every player will look at their situation, and it's always case by case. You got to be careful of taking just like a snapshot of, like, oh, here's what it is. You got to look at the entire body of work. Which I would say, like, because this actually get into the draft a little bit. Okay, look at players' body of work. Players started 45, 50 games. You're looking at their body of work as opposed to, well, they did this in this game. They did this in that game. Okay, over the totality of it, what does it look like? And then you got to be able to say, here's what we think it's going to be, right? And with NFL players, some players have more body of work than others, right? So you're looking at the whole body of work, and if they've shown the ability to do things at a certain level, then it means it's in there, right? And then it's like, all right, what else can you do? And every year, you're starting from scratch, right? So I think each player looks at it, hey, I'm going to focus on this. This is off-season, whatever your list is, right? And we're going to have kind of a checklist for the players when they come to the building. Hey, these 3 or 4 things, here's what we're looking for relative to improvement. And then you can look at the end of the year. All right, did they improve that? Did they not? So it's ongoing. It's very fluid. So, again, you have to look at everything. You just can't look at one particular play, one particular game, one particular situation.
Or one particular season. And I think that's kind of where we're at with the CJ thing. I think right now, the best way that I've kind of gathered this, and this happened on SNL with Stoots, is I think right now we're in a situation where CJ Stroud, I think he's on the best case scenario, Baker Mayfield / current Sam Darnold trajectory. And I think there's a recency bias, much like when we talk about Sam Darnold and we know that he can implode at any time. I think a lot of times there's an undertone when it comes to talking about Sam Darnold to where he's judged for his first couple seasons, which were rough with the Jets. And I think that's kind of the opposite effect with CJ Stroud, who had a historic season with the Texans, and we kind of act like that exists. But I think it kind of cancels out, and I think that's kind of where we're at. And if you're looking at like the range of what you pay CJ Stroud, I think he's in that 30, 35, maybe even $40 million range of the Sam Darnolds and of the Baker Mayfields. I think that's the range that they're in. And I think if that happens, then cool. But if we're talking about getting up to the 50s, 55s, that's where I think you're going to have a problem. And that's where I would not assume that that's going to happen. And when a guy comes out and says, well, I'm glad that the team doesn't have to rely on me, and it's not all my fault whenever it goes down, that's a guy who kind of maybe is just accepting the fact that he's not going to be that guy, which is fine. That's great. You can win. Like if the roster construction is such, you can do a lot worse than putting CJ Stroud in the Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield range. I think that's cool. I think before this year, and I think even for a little bit, not the most part, for a little bit, you've been looking at it and saying, okay, CJ Stroud perhaps will Is he going to demand the $50 million? I don't see that guy walking through the door. And Caserio talks about the full body of work with CJ Stroud. I think that when something like this happens, and we'll get into Caserio's role around this, like putting a better team around CJ Stroud. But when something happens like this, like you dive a little bit more into the numbers, and you look at CJ Stroud, the body of work, and the body of work is really such of the Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. And that's trying to get there. He's not there yet, but that's trying to get there. They've stacked good seasons behind each other. Now, Baker Mayfield, things kind of got away from him this year. There were some injuries, and they kind of had a meltdown. But the previous two, it was about as good as it got. Division titles. CJ Stroud's going to have to stack good seasons, and they're going to have to. They're just going to have to accept what it is. And once as far as CJ Stroud being on his rookie contract right now, I think you're fine. There's not like a move on type of thing, unless he gets mentally crushed, which is also a possibility. But if you look closer at the body of work, CJ Stroud this year, he was 2 of 5 versus playoff teams. 2 and 5. And I'm not counting the Denver game, which he left early. Against playoff teams, CJ Stroud was 2 of 5, 2 for 5, 2 and 5. 11 of his 13 interceptions were on the road against playoff teams. He had 8 touchdowns and 12 interceptions total against playoff teams. 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Against non-playoff teams, he had 13 touchdowns and 1 interception. So when we talk about, the schedule was tougher and all this, look how he performed against the bad teams as compared to the good teams. Like the Chiefs' performance was fine. And we were the first to say, yeah, they don't win that game without CJ Stroud. But that's what you're hanging your hat on, Nick? Davis Mills had as many wins against playoff teams as CJ Stroud. We know Davis Mills isn't as good as CJ Stroud. But Davis Mills was 2-0 against playoff teams. CJ Stroud was 2 and 5 with 8 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. So I do think that the question needs to be asked now, does CJ Stroud struggle when he plays good teams? Is there some sort of blueprint? Is there a blueprint for CJ Stroud? We hear him talk a lot about the high shells defense and all that. Is there some sort of blueprint? It's not a finished product type of thing, but I think it's a good question. The other question is, because we are hearing from Nick Caserio, is did Nick Caserio do right by CJ Stroud in 2025? I think it's a fair question. Nick Caserio was asked it. How do you think he answered it?
I mean, I'm not really sure the question. I'd say we had one of the best teams in the league. So, I mean, we went out there and competed with every team in the league that we played. So, I mean, I'm not sure like what the question is.
I can specify. The offense, according to their statistics, didn't take a huge jump offensively. And I'm wondering.
The most important statistic is winning games. So we want, that's what we're focused 100%,
on. But you lost in the divisional round again. You ultimately want to get farther. Do you feel like you could have done more to get to that point? Or were there circumstances that you felt were out of control?
We had a good enough team to win any game we played. In the end, we didn't execute well enough. You can't turn the ball over 5 times in a divisional playoff round.
And that's basically saying the quarterback sucked. The quarterback sucked. That's why we lost. And Caserio gets grilled more than CJ does. And the census is, and I don't think it works here, is that he didn't do enough. I think this offseason they did plenty to get the job done. The superpower lowered the expectation, but I think as far as if you look at his moves and you look at what they did on offense, it wasn't all perfect, but there was enough around CJ Stroud. They improved the offensive line. They set out to do that. They improved the culture of the offensive line. They set out to do that. The Laramie Tunsil move paid off. There were some bad moves on the offensive line with Laken Tomlinson and Cam Robinson. Absolute disaster. There's also a bad move on defense with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which they were able to recover from. Maybe there is a coaching gap. But the reason why was because of the quarterback. And that's why at the end of that, you say you can't turn the ball over and lose. If you watch that game, it wasn't this team doesn't have a lot of weapons, even with the injuries. They had plenty of weapons. They had a second-round pick who was one of the best young receivers this year. They had Christian Kirk, who was coming off 144 yards. I'm not sitting here saying he's great. He's coming off 144 yards. and they had other guys that were capable of making plays. So the notion, and it seems like there's a little bit more aggressiveness at Caserio, and I'm the king of being aggressive with Caserio when the time is right. But it seems like there's just a little bit more aggressiveness with him compared to the actual reason why I'm talking about Nick Caserio's press conference instead of the Texans taking on the Denver Broncos. Here's more from Cacerio, because once again, he gets asked about if he had enough guys around CJ Stroud.
It's a combination of things, make sure we got enough players, we're doing some things schematically, or there's some things that have popped up in those games. So again, you look at those games, you look at other games as well, you look around the league, what are some teams doing, what are some things you might be able to incorporate. So again, offense has really never been D'Amico and I have never sat in our office and said, our offense is a concern. What do we got to do? We got to play better. There's some things that we can do better. So try to build a good team, try to get good players in here with the right mentality and the right mindset. I guess Nico Collins isn't a good enough player. So, maybe we can find a player better than Nico Collins. I don't know. So we'll try to do the best we can, try to bring good players in this building, and try to put together a good team that gives us a chance to compete, on each Sunday. Yeah, we're trying to do what's best for the team. This program's not about one individual, so we're not building a team based on one person, one facet of anything. We're trying to look at the big picture.
I understand that. That's an important part.
Yeah, it doesn't affect, how we look at the team. So what do we need to do to build the best team possible, put the best team together, and then give ourselves the opportunity to compete on a weekly basis, which we've certainly done that. We put ourselves in a good position.
Yeah, I think the GM was fine. I think there's a little bit of I think there's a natural feel that you want to surround your quarterback with the best situation possible. I think last year that was high, especially with the way that Bobby Slowick was going down. I don't think Nick Caley's awesome. I don't know that CJ Stroud's awesome either. And you look at those numbers and you look at the way that he performed, the stuff that he said, and it just leads you to wonder. But this is not the one time where I don't look at this and listen to this and watch this season and say, hey, Nick did a bad job. We say this all the time in the offseason. I think this is always really important. I think it's something that you need to emphasize. And I try to emphasize before the draft. I try to emphasize this before the free agency. You can't fix all your issues in one offseason. It's damn near impossible. It's damn near impossible. So yeah, it's not going to be perfect. The Texans need to get better on offense. There's no doubt. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of attention paid to that. There was a lot of attention paid to that last year. They needed damn near every position on the offensive line. They needed more receivers. They needed running backs. They needed probably tight ends. They weren't able to really address the tight end thing, and Dalton Schultz had one of his better seasons, but that's where they're at. They also have a defensive-minded coach. But let's not just focus on the offense, because they say complementary football for a reason. The defense sets it up to where you got to do less with the offense. And if you're able to do something over the course of a season, but then you're not able to do it when it matters most, what does that say about you? And how much does it weigh? How much more does it weigh? And that's where we talk about the recency and all that type of stuff. But where does it weigh? If you ace the quizzes and then you fail the exam, what are we saying? I guess you get a passing grade, but you don't get into the school that you want to go to, which is, I guess in this case, is the AFC Championship game. I don't know, but I've never been in a situation where you weigh, a game against the Ravens without anyone on their team the same as a playoff game. I don't think that's the world that we live in. But yeah, they got to figure some stuff out on offense, but this wasn't a malpractice situation. This was poor quarterback play. Nothing more, nothing less. And I did find it interesting how Cacerio he's getting weirdly questioned as if CJ Stroud is, I don't know. Like CJ Stroud's like the victim of the organization or something like that. I was a little bit confused by that listening back to it.
Swarm.
Especially when we hear CJ talk. WBFX says, do you still have faith in CJ Landry or not? I really like my opinion of CJ Stroud has always been fair. I was actually listening. Someone sent me something today of I was on with McElvoy on KPRC, and it was during the Bears game, and I said, you know, the one thing that I think is elite is that CJ Stroud is the edge guys, and there's a couple former Texans on the stage. They're like, no, CJ's elite. Don't discount him. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I was even just saying maybe he can get there. I've always had a decent grasp of CJ Stroud, but I've adjusted my expectations. Even me, I've adjusted my expectations. I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the world. I think there is something to monitor when it comes to the mental side of things. But nah, do I have hope like I did after year one or maybe even after year two that CJ Stroud is going to be one of the top 8 quarterbacks in the league? I don't. Do I think that he could get to the point where he's like in the Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff area? Sure. I believe in that. And I think you could do a lot worse than CJ Stroud, especially on his rookie contract. Daniel Jones was making more than CJ this year, I believe, or it was pretty close. So yeah, I don't think you just move on from him. I think that's dramatic, but it is what it is with him. Stroud is like Winston, need to move on to win a Super Bowl. I don't know if him and Winston are alike really. At all. Space Age said, do you have faith in him? Define faith? I didn't dance around shit. I said I've adjusted my expectations, and when he's not on his rookie deal, when he's on his rookie deal, I'm fine with it. Do I have faith in paying him like an elite quarterback? No, there's nothing to really adjust or dance around. It is what it is. On the chat, someone's giving their 40 time in the chat. I'm confused how this even happened. This is wild. I ran a 4.32 as a freshman in high school, bro. He's slow as F. Congratulations, Al Bundy. Here's more from CJ Stroud or from Nick Caserio on doing enough on offense.
I mean, I'm not really sure the question. I'd say we had one of the best teams in the league. So, I mean, we went out there and competed with every team in the league that we played. So, I mean, I'm not sure like what the question is.
I can specify. You know, the offense, according to their statistics, didn't take a huge jump offensively. And I'm wondering,
the most important statistic is winning games. So we won.
That's JA drilling him again. So I asked him, when we talk about this rookie deal stuff, I asked him about CJ Stroud. How important is it next year? Because it's important. They got to figure out their investment, how much they're going to invest, what they're going to do. I asked Nick Caserio about that. Here's what he said.
I'm from Bobby Slowick last year and went to Nick Caley. Do you feel validated in that decision? And is Nick Caley, are you comfortable in saying when a quarterback's on his rookie deal, we talk about it's probably easier to put a team around him. How critical is next year, not just for CJ to prove that he can be that guy, but for the organization to believe that he can be that guy and not turn the ball over in the divisional round?
I mean, every year you kind of start from scratch. So, and everybody is focused on individual improvement. So CJ's played a lot of good football, won a lot of games, done a lot of great things for this organization. And I think all of us are excited about the opportunity in front of us for the 26th season. It's a year-to-year league. I mean, that's where we're focused on the 2026 season, trying to put the best team together and hopefully put ourselves in a position that we can go out there and play pretty good football and, you know, win a bunch of games. So that's where our focus is.
Now that's a salad. That's a salad right there. That's a word salad. This is not the same. Like when you're going into year 4, the final like year of a rookie contract, it's not the same as going into year one or going into year two of the rookie contract. It's important. You got to pick up the 5th-year option. No matter what happens, CJ Stroud's 5th-year option is getting picked up. But it's put up or shut up time. That's what happened with the Rams with Jared Goff. They got to a Super Bowl and they said, you know what? We're getting to a Super Bowl not because of. We're getting to a Super Bowl. We're losing Super Bowls because of. He's not terrible. We get there, but once we get there, we get blanked by the Patriots. Now, the Rams could have just said, okay, it doesn't matter. We're going to pay Jared Goff. We're going to figure this out. We're going to stay on this treadmill. What'd they do? They traded him for Matthew Stafford because they didn't want to invest as much as it was going to require. So that's the important decision that you got to make. They don't have to make it right now, but this is a crucial year for it. After 5 years of Jared Goff and a Super Bowl appearance and some pretty good seasons, the Rams said, we're moving on. Sean McVay said, hey, we got to take the next step. And they won a Super Bowl, and they've been competing near the top for a lot of this. Whenever there's not injuries, they're right there. And you have Matthew Stafford now looking to go back on the road against Seattle. So that's where things are, and that's the evaluation you have to make when it comes to a quarterback on the rookie deal. And this is the thing that we always talk about. As soon as a rookie, as soon as you get a rookie quarterback, is like, can you take advantage of that window? Because after that goes away. That's just the way it goes. Now, who's going to be calling the plays is another thing. We'll get to that in a sec. But here's more emphasis from Nick Caserio about the turnovers. He's making it very clear why they lost. Here's Nick Caserio.
Taking care of the football is a single most important stat correlated to winning. I mean, look it up. It's the truth. If you don't turn the ball over, you enhance your chances of winning. It's 85, 90%. I mean, so that's the most important stat. Turnovers, taking care of the football, like look around the league. So in the end, we had a good enough team to beat anybody. We played with every team in the league. There's more room in front of us. And in the end, if we execute better, we'll still be playing. I mean, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but that's the truth.
It is the truth. And I think that's the main reason that you're not there. But they always have to go back to this body of work crap.
And our ball security, I think this is a franchise record for least amount of turnovers. So we've shown that we can take care of the football. We did a poor job of it in the game the other day and ended up costing us. Still an opportunity to win the game despite how poorly we played, which I'd say that game was emblematic of kind of maybe the first 3 games. When you go back and look at those first 3 games of the season, that's what happened.
Here's the problem. 12 of the 13 interceptions CJ Stroud threw were against playoff teams. That's good teams. Usually good teams have good coaches. Usually good coaches can figure out tendencies. But he's talking about this body of work. And if you just look at the stats, like if you didn't watch Texans football and you didn't watch every snap of Texans football and you didn't blab about Texans football for a living and you hadn't been doing that for a long time, you could just take that on the surface and say, okay. But the body of work for CJ Stroud this year, again, I repeat, 12 of his 13 interceptions were against playoff teams. I'll paste it in here just so that we can emphasize this. Because we saw this. It was against good teams. Only 8 of his touchdowns of his 21 and 12 of his 13 interceptions were against playoff teams. Now, I always find this amusing because when you do this, and I guess it's fair, a lot of times it's like, well, 4 of those came against one team. Okay. Well, then let's take away the 4 if you would like to do that. Now, I will say this. When we were talking about how good CJ Stroud's stats were his rookie year, I wasn't saying, well, let's take away the 5 from against this team, this crappy team. I'm always amused by that. Stoots will always be like, yeah, well, if it weren't for that 78-yard run, it wouldn't. I'm like, okay, we're taking that away. Well, then let's just take it away. Let's take away the 4. 8 of his 9 interceptions were against playoff teams. Is that not concerning? I think that's a little bit concerning when you look at the comparison of the stats against bad teams and the stats against good teams. Like even the game, like think about this. And I agree with it because I said it as well. But the Kansas City game, they don't win that game without CJ Stroud. That's true. The offense also completely disappeared in the second half of that game. Now, Nick Caley sucked, and he was very mediocre. Same thing with Buffalo, but maybe the quarterback wasn't helping. Like this is the same quarterback, different OC, and it looks a little bit the same. And I find that funny. Like Nick Caserio sitting there getting grilled. It's like, well, did you do enough on offense? Well, the offense didn't improve. Well, they made changes, didn't they? Like think about this. Let's open our eyes. I'm not picking on JA, but he said, yeah, do you think you did enough? Well, the offense didn't improve. Okay. Change the OC. Revamp the O-line. Added receivers. What's the same here? It makes you think. Now, whether Nick Caley sucks or not, I think it's safe to say he will be back. I asked Nick Caserio about Nick Caley. This is what he said. Confirmation that old Nick, not Nick Caserio, the other Nick C. Nick. Will be back.
Went from Bobby Slowick last year and went to Nick Caley. Do you feel validated in that decision? And is Nick Caley, are you comfortable in saying he's going to be calling plays in 2026?
Yeah, I would anticipate Nick being here next year. I think Nick learned a lot. First opportunity as a play caller. I'd say offensively, probably the last 2 to 3 months of the year, played pretty good football and did a lot of good things. So there was growth and improvement. There's always areas that we can improve and get better. And that's what, D'Amico mentioned the other day. Next couple weeks right after the season, kind of looking at everything, go through, the coaching staff, go through other aspects of the staff. Is there anything that we have to do? All right, then we'll look at some things schematically, start to go through the self-scout, try to figure out, all right, what are some of the things that we did well?
Yeah, and that's the good evaluation. Like when you're talking about the CJ Strouds and you're talking about the Jared Goffs, the Jimmy Garoppolos, the even Brock Purdy's, Sam Darnold's, you got to get a run game. And Joe Mixon not being out that hurt. Although he was getting older, who knows which direction Joe Mixon would have gone. A lot of times running backs kind of fall off. Saw Saquon this year. Saquon's in the same age range as Joe Mixon. He fell off this year. And that was the big difference. Jalen Hurts, throw Jalen Hurts in the mix. Like I'm being realistic with the CJ Stroud tiers now. I think it's fair. Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, Sam Darnold, Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm talking about like teams succeeding, like based on the expectations. The other names that I mentioned, Baker Mayfield, like if he can get there, outside of Mayfield, really, like you get a good running back. Like maybe they can figure that out. Jared Goff has a couple of good backs in Detroit. Brock Purdy and Jimmy Garoppolo, the trade for Christian McCaffrey completely set stuff off. Right now, best running back duo in the league, arguably one of them is in Seattle. So maybe figure that out. But it definitely hurt that they didn't have Joe Mixon, and it was a weird-ass situation. Nick Caserio, you knew he was going to have to mention this. He is getting absolutely crushed for this and the way that they handled this. It's weird. I don't know if it's going to make it less weird, but here is all the back and forth and all the questions Nick Caserio was asked about Joe Mixon.
So as it pertains to Joe, here's what I would say. It was a very unique situation. I don't think anybody really had any clarity, honestly, from the start of the year until now. I'd say Joe worked very, very hard to try to get himself ready to play football. It just never manifested itself and came to fruition. So probably have an opportunity to kind of see where he is in the offseason relative to next year. But again, it was as unique a situation and injury as I've been associated with. And it's just, I don't want to call it a freak thing, but it's just kind of a freak thing. And Joe worked really hard, put his best foot forward. It didn't work out. We haven't seen Joe in a little bit, so I think at some point we'll see him, and then we'll be able to evaluate kind of where he is, and then based on the information, we'll kind of see what the status is moving forward.
Do you want to bring him, have him back if you can?
Yeah, I mean, he's under contract, so we'll evaluate his situation, and then, we'll see where it goes from there.
With what you know now about his situation, would you expect that he'd be able to play next season?
It's honestly hard to answer that right now because we haven't really seen him in a little bit. So at some point we'll see him. We'll probably get a better idea, maybe do some follow-up, examinations and get more information. Once we have more information, I think we'll better be able to make a better assessment. He didn't do anything off the field. It wasn't like he was riding like a snowmobile or anything like that. I'd say it was just more of a medical condition or situation that just it really didn't improve maybe as much as everybody would have hoped. I mean, I'm not trying to evade the question. I think that's the reality of the situation. So he didn't jump off a building, he wasn't cliff diving or anything like that. He wasn't doing anything irresponsible. It was a freak thing. Honestly, I've never seen it. Just the condition.
Hope that situation will improve before next summer.
We'll see. I mean, believe me, I'm not smart enough to be a doctor, so I'll leave that up to the medical experts. And once we going back to some of the other questions, as we get a little bit more clarity, more information, then we'll kind of see where we are moving forward.
Yeah, I can 100% tell you he didn't shoot himself in the foot. I know that on very good authority. Someone who would know. He did not shoot himself in the foot. And normally a dumbass comment like that wouldn't really make the internet. But with how weird this was, all bets were off. You might as well have some fun with it. But the days of Joe Mixon are done. He will not play for the Texans again. You heard him talk about him not being in the building. That will not happen. So the Mixon bit is over. It's just done. Nathan Palmer on the chat says no more podcasts and commercials for CJ this year. He didn't do them last year. I mean, I don't know that too many people want to have him on their podcast at this point, but yeah, he didn't really do them last year. He kind of shied away from that. And I think he knows how cruel the internet can be once people go back and kind of revisit some of that stuff. So I don't think he anticipates. I would anticipate him doing that, and I also wouldn't anticipate there being too much demand for that to happen. It's like Poindexter saying he's not going to show up to the party. Well, you weren't really invited, and I'm not saying CJ's Poindexter. I'm just saying like after year one, it's like the opposite of Mike Jones. Everybody wanted to have you on. Everybody wanted to talk. You wanted to talk. You wanted to give your top 5 quarterbacks, all that type of stuff. You wanted to do a draft stream with Micah Parsons where you were giving advice to rookies that were drafted and stuff like that. And now it's just a little bit different. It's like back then, the reverse of back then they didn't want me. It's the complete opposite. So it's just kind of like a flip. Kind of like Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold started out shitty and now Sam Darnold's playing good. Baker Mayfield went through adversity. Now Baker Mayfield's playing good. So it's just a little bit different from him. Gregory on the chat says Mills struggled in the second half to move the ball against Buffalo, just like CJ did in the second half against the Chiefs. Yeah, we've covered that very well. It was less than 100 yards combined. Is this like a case for or against CJ? I mean, I'm confused because Davis Mills has nothing to do with this discussion outside of when we're talking about total wins against playoff teams. That was the only time that Davis Mills came up. But just let me know in the chat, Gregory. I'm not picking on you. Is this a case for or against? So the offense looked the same with Mills and Stroud. What are we saying there? Confused. MH Wheat Nation says statistically the Texans offense was better than last year, according to Aaron Wilson. Okay.
Hey, bro. Alpha Aaron here.
Yeah, there was a little bit of improvement. Not much to really go. I didn't see massive improvement. But again, you watch the game. It was not. They did not lose that game because of Nick Caley. They lost the game because of the quarterback. I think that's something that Nick Caley said. The other thing is it's going to get more difficult. We talked about the opportunity in front of the Texans, and we talked about just how difficult it is to kind of repeat those types of things. And that was Nick Caserio talking about the division, just the state of it and how much more difficult it's going to be. And that's why it's gotta suck for him. And I think that's why it sucks for a lot of you people. I do mean you people, the fans, because opportunities like that don't come around often.
Jacksonville, I think, has done an awesome job. I mean, Tony, James, Liam did a great job this year. They showed it. I mean, I think Tennessee is going to be much improved. I think Coach Sal's a hell of a coach. Coach Steichen and the Colts, I mean, they've shown year in and year out they can compete with anybody. So, I mean, we're going to have a work cut out for us in the division, but that's why this league, when you go 1 through 32, the gap between 1 and 32, it's not as big as the numbers suggest. So, I mean, all of us, you got to embrace it. You got to embrace it, and it's okay to fail, but, you got to pick yourself back up and, try to come up with some answers and solutions. So that's how we approach it.
Yeah, I mean it's no different. Like you gotta put the best team possible around him, and that's the goal for every quarterback. But I think look, the good news is it might be easier to put a team around CJ Stroud. Now maybe you get to a point where it's good for a split for him and them, and maybe CJ needs to change the scenery and they do. I'm not saying now. I'm saying like after this year. But good news is you're not going to be paying a quarterback $55 million unless you're dumb. Like unless there's like significant improvement. You're not going to do that, and that makes it easier to be able to build a team around him, especially given the pieces that you have. So maybe you lean on the defense. Maybe you get to a point where CJ Stroud's able to get the job done, but that's what it is. But the whole theme here, it's not always the case at the end of the season when Nick Caserio speaks. But I think in this case, Nick Caserio, he did a decent job. He had some mistakes. But much like he's talking about CJ Stroud, overall body of work, I think the overall body of work of what they set out to do and what they surrounded CJ Stroud with, I think he did an okay job. Can always be better, but I think he did an okay job, and it was a much better job by Caserio and D'Amico than the quarterback. So we'll see what they do this offseason. Senior Bowl next week, Combine in about a month. Tomorrow we'll get more into this, but it is what it is right now with the Texans. I think if you adjust your expectations and you throw CJ in that group, then I think it's a win-win situation. Much like I talked about, hey, Nick Caserio, like you're comparing yourself like this 3-year stretch to the history of the Texans organization. It's a mediocre ass franchise. Like the success, it's comical that in 23 years you haven't gotten to the conference championship game. It's comical. It's very mediocre. So if you're going to compare yourself to that, it's a winning battle for you. Good for you. Congratulations. It's always going to be great. And they also went 2 years without trying to win games and eliminating cap space and stockpiling draft picks and all that. So if you compare it to those 2 years from before D'Amico got here, I think it's a winning battle for him. If you're going to compare CJ Stroud to elite top 8 quarterbacks, it's probably a losing battle. So it goes back to you got to pick your battles. And the reality is not every quarterback in the conference championship is elite. Not always. Now, in this one, you got some pretty good ones. But I think it's just adjusting expectations. Nick Caserio needs to aim a little bit higher. And with CJ Stroud, you just adjust it and you still got a good team. You didn't need him to be phenomenal. You didn't need him to be Superman. There's been times where quarterbacks have walked off the field and they've needed to be Superman for the team to win. That wasn't the case this year. And you know what? That's a good thing. And hopefully CJ Stroud gets his mind right. Hopefully Nick Caserio does his thing and puts the best team possible around CJ Stroud. You can't fix all the issues, but right now the defense is straight. You got most of those guys coming back. You can fill those holes and then get a badass run game and then figure out some weapons and hope that the guys get better. So it could be a lot worse. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. Subscribe, like, ride along. Always remember, no matter what, no matter how you feel about the quarterback, no matter how you feel about the GM, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Reality sits in. The offseason is finally upon us. Damn, but oh well.
Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do.